Let us pray. Loving God, we are so thankful for all the blessings that you give us and for our community of faith and our families and friends. And we also give you special thanks to all the veterans who have so faithfully served our country and other countries to provide freedom so that we may be here to worship with you today. So God, we ask that you open our hearts and minds this day and help us to hear your message through your humble servant, we pray. Amen. So I have these two passages of Scripture, one from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament. The first one involves a widow who has a son. Now, the son probably isn't old enough to work, because if he was, he would be taking care of his mother. But instead, she's still involved in taking care of him. And so she has just a little bit of flour left. Just enough to make some measly little bit of meal for her and his son. And she knows after that there's no more food. So they'll probably die of starvation. And yet God sends Elijah to Zarephath. And he says that you're going to meet a widow, and she's going to take care of you, because I've instructed her to do so. So Elijah goes, and so he asks for water. Well, okay, you can draw water from a well, but if there's a drought, there's probably very little water left. And we all know that we need water to survive, don't we? Yes? No? Yes. And of course we find out that water is really healthy, and we should be drinking a lot of water, but not so much that we drown ourselves in water. But water is life. And so this widow, who is so struggling and has nothing really left to give, there's something that happens. She does end up obliges Elijah, and she puts her trust. She puts her trust in what Elijah has said. He said, the God of Israel will not let this jar to be empty, right? Or the oil to be unfull. It will always be there, because until the rain comes again. And so she trusts, she believes. She believes in Elijah, she believes in the God of Israel. She believes that God will provide. Well, then we have this other story, and I know this is Commitment Sunday, Pledge Sunday, and wouldn't you know, oh yes, it's the widow's mite, formerly known as the widow's mite. That story is like, yeah, they always use this scripture on Stewardship Sunday, or Pledge Sunday, or Commitment Sunday. Well, it doesn't always happen that way, but it was part of the lectionary this week. I'm just telling you. I can pull up the sheets and tell you that this was the scripture for the lectionary of the gospel reading. So I thought, well, we'll just use it anyway. So here again, we have a widow. And we know the story where these other people, they gave their money to the temple, and some of them were kind of showing off, well, look how much I gave. You know, they're a little bit prideful or boastful about it. And then here comes this widow, right? And what does she have left? She has just two shillings, 2 drachma, not drachma, that's Greek, 2 shekels, whatever it might have been, what we call 2 coins. We say it was worth maybe 2 cents, okay? She had 2 coins, that's all she had left. And she gave it to the temple. And Jesus had seen all this, and so he drew the attention to his disciples about what this woman did. Again, a widow. Again, someone who trusted in God, because she believed that God would provide. Now, widows back then, in the Bible they always say that they need to be taken care of, right? Because widows were marginalized. They were on the outskirts of society in a sense, because they weren't able to make an income. If their husband left them anything, then that was okay. But if there wasn't anything, they really struggled. And, you know, Jesus kept saying that you must take care of the widows and the orphans, right? Because otherwise they would be struggling. So they were on the outside of society in many ways and marginalized. And yet, here's another widow who believed. She trusted. She trusted in God, and she put her last 2 coins into the offering. She gave all that she had. You might think of this also too as a precursor to what Jesus was going to do in the future. You know, when we get to Lent and Easter, we know that Jesus gave himself up for all of us. He gave all that he had. He gave all that he had in ministry, but he also gave his life for all of us so that we could live. And so here's this woman who gave everything that she had. Well, I know none of us can do that these days. We have bills we have to pay, don't we? We struggle sometimes. We struggle, well, how can I give? What can I give? And it's not just about money. Yes, we use money to pay our bills. We use money to do mission and outreach here. All the different things that we do, the wonderful shoeboxes that we're going to be blessing in the second service. We all went out and got things to put in those shoeboxes to give to others, right? To show the love of God to children who may or may not know yet about God. So there's ways that we contribute that we don't always think of. And so I want to share a story with you. It's a true story. They wrote a book and they actually made a movie. Paramount made a movie, but then they decided not to premiere it or whatever you want to call it. So there was a Christian group that bought it and then showed the movie. And I have to double check the title because I'm going to say it incorrectly. It was called Same Kind of Different as Me. Has anybody heard that story? Same Kind of Different as Me. Anybody? It was written by two men, Ron Hall and Denver Moore. Ron Hall was a wealthy man, had a wife and two kids. He was an art dealer of some sort, so they had a humongous house. His wife, a very faithful woman, and they had two great kids, but she gave of herself in different ways than her husband did. And he got into a little bit of difficulty with the marriage, and so she gave him a choice. Do you believe in this marriage? Do you believe? If so, are you committed to making this work? And he said yes. So she made him do some things that he wasn't really comfortable doing. First thing that they did is he's in a very nice, I think this probably took place, I don't know how long ago, maybe in the 60s or 70s or something like that, but he has a beautiful Mercedes convertible, okay? And it takes place someplace down south. And so she has him drive to the other side of the tracks, to a neighborhood that doesn't look too safe. And he's not figuring out, why are we doing this? And she says, you gotta come with me. And so he goes in there. There's a food pantry, like the rescue mission, you know, like feeding meals, okay? And so she convinces him to start serving meals. And he's still very off-put by this whole thing. But then she makes him try and meet this one man who has a really violent temper, is smashing things up and is all angry. And she steps up right up front at first when he's doing this, and she tells this man to stop because there's a child in the room. And so this man does stop, but he's just like shocked that here's this, woman, speaking to him and telling him to stop. And there's all these other men and other people there. But little by little, what happens is the husband eventually gets to know this man. And this man's name is Denver. And they start to connect, but very difficultly, because Denver doesn't trust anybody, and certainly doesn't trust any rich white man, okay? So they start to connect, and little by little, they build this relationship, but the relationship also happens with the wife and the two kids. And they start inviting him to be doing things part of the family and stuff in different ways. There's some sadness to this story, and I'm not going to tell you everything in case you see the movie or you read the book. But the bottom line is at the end, Denver and the husband, they write this incredible story. And what they realize is that here is a woman, the wife, who was gutsy enough to tell this man to stop fighting, to stop being so violent. And through her love and grace and compassion, the gifts that she had to share, because it wasn't about money for her. It was about sharing God's love and grace with somebody else. This man lost all his anger and hatred. And the husband also grew and learned how to build relationships with somebody who was a stranger at first, who became a very dear, close friend for the rest of their lives. And then they wrote this story. So often we think that we can't connect with somebody that we don't know. Often we think that we have nothing to share, nothing to give to somebody. And what it took some courage by this husband. It took some courage by this man who had been homeless all this time, Denver, who had been homeless and had a rough life in many ways. Denver said that they had to dig down deep in him to find the good man that was inside. And when they did, that man began to blossom, and all the anger and hatred left. And then there was joy, and there was love and grace with all of them. And they continued to do that ministry for the homeless. They built gardens, they did all sorts of things, and made this place a very special place for so many people. So when God asks us to give, it's not just about giving finances. Yes, we always have to have money to run the church and everything. God is asking us to serve in different ways. And today in particular, we're honoring veterans because today is Veterans Day. I mean, I know we're celebrating it tomorrow because you get the holiday off, but today is officially Veterans Day. And we see that especially, maybe even more so overseas. I've shared with you probably before, but when you go to England and you go to all the big churches there, there's always all these little chapels all behind the altar. These churches are humongous, okay? And the thing that always struck me is there's an American chapel. Because there's dedication and tribute and thanks for all the soldiers from World War I and World War II that helped save those countries from, like we said, Hitler and everything else, from communism, whatever. So they honor those people, and so it's still a very special thing for them over there. It's special for us here, too, because we have people who have been willing to serve, to give of themselves. Yes, they serve our country, but they also give us this freedom to be here today. This freedom that we can not only say the things we want to say, even though some people don't always say the nicest things on social media, right, or post the right things on Facebook, but it gives us the opportunity to be here today, to freely worship God, to freely live out our callings because of those who've served. So I want to say thank you to all of our veterans. I want to say thank you to all those who are still serving today. And I want to share a little bit that story that I was sharing before about these two men, Denver and the husband. How can they relate to one another if they haven't walked in each other's shoes, right? They have a difficult time understanding one another at first. And it's the same thing with us who've never served in the military. Do we totally understand what they've gone through? We have a lot of soldiers today suffering from PTSD, right? Because they go so many times over to Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's so much for them to try and come back into our society and just transition back into the world thinking that, oh, everything's fine. They've probably seen things that we can't understand. And when I was in seminary, we shared about, we did case studies once a week in our pastoral care class. And what they did was, the ministers, all of our supervisors were there. They would come and attend. And they were asked, what is one thing that you want to have a case study on? And all of our supervisors said, we want something to do with the military, how to do pastoral care. Because again, most of these military clergy had never served in the military. So we had like 4 or 5 guests, different people that had served in the military. 2 of them had become ministers. One was still serving as an army chaplain, and 2 others had just, they came. And we had the gentleman in charge of my best friend. She was doing her internship at the VA place in Canandaigua, where they deal with the mental issues and brain disorders and stuff for the veterans. And her supervisor came, and so they did the presentation of the case study. And for us, it was a gift, because not that we could totally understand what these people have gone through, but they actually openly shared their stories. And so often you find that people, especially veterans, they might share with another veteran because they know what they've been through, but they don't always share with us civilians, right? And here was a case where these people shared. And so they gave us a gift because it gave me a deeper appreciation for the things that they had gone through in their lives and in their service. Could I help them out anymore? I don't know, but at least it helped me a little bit to better appreciate that. So today, we have heard about two stories of widows who trusted in God. They put their trust in God, and they were taken care of. We heard about a woman who convinced her husband to trust in her, which helped him also learn about God and learn about grace and compassion by giving of themselves. It wasn't about giving of money. It wasn't about just making a contribution. It was about actively participating in the work of ministry. And so today, when we pray for our commitments, our pledge cards, whatever you want to call them, I ask that even if you can't financially help us, there is on the back a place where you can check that I will pray for the church. And all of us should be able to do that. We will do a blessing of that at the end. But right now, I want us to share that prayer for the veterans today. So let us pray that prayer. It's on the other side of your bulletin. It's under the sermon notes and thoughts. Let's pray this together. God, you know that it can be difficult for a person who has returned from battle or stressful military service to reintegrate into normal everyday life. You know that veterans can feel isolated and alone, even in the midst of their friends and families, because there are few around who understand their experience. So I ask you to place in the path of our veterans those who do understand or strive to, that they may feel less alone. Remind them often that while their fellow human beings may never fully comprehend, you see, you know, and you identify with them in everything. Lord, you know how deep a warrior's wounds go. You know the loss that many of our veterans in body and soul. You know the memories that haunt them and the scars that many of them continue to carry. Please bring healing to those veterans who still hurt. Please grant patience and wisdom to those around them who cannot understand, but can sometimes help the healing process. Lord, we thank you. And all God's people said, amen.